You're here for another episode of The VUU. I am Meg Riley, a little jet-lagged, but none the worse for the wear, sitting here at a Best Western Hotel in Concord, New Hampshire. Don't ask. And I'm delighted to have the regulars introduce themselves. And looks like Joanna just got bounced off, but I'm confident she will claw her way back in. I'm going to start with Shauna Foster, our tech person. Shauna, you want to give some instructions and announcements to folks?
Sure. So thanks for watching, and if you're watching us live, you can ask questions through the Google Questions and Answers app, or you can tweet with us on Twitter and use #TheView, and if you ask there, we will make sure we answer your question live during the show. And I'm calling from Omaha, Nebraska.
Hi, I'm Patrice Curtis, and Meg and I were having a little laugh this morning because she's in Concord, New Hampshire, and I'm in Concord, California. Good morning, everybody.
Hi, and I'm Tom Shade, and I'm calling from Ann Arbor, Michigan, where it's been rainy every day for the last 3-4 days. People are getting depressed. We used to be depressed about the winter. Now we're depressed about the spring. But I've had a week where I've actually haven't had to go anywhere or do very much of anything, so I'm kind of in a rest and restore mode, so I'm happy to be here. But I've been following Meg Riley, who's been in Iceland. So, Meg?
Let me just say I've loved it. Jake, come on and say hi.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Jake Morrill, and following the Concord theme, I'm just about a mile away from Concord, Tennessee, which is in West Knoxville. It's a pretty fancy place in West Knoxville. I'm in a friend's basement hiding out from the rest of the world, and a couple of days away from spending my summer in Fort Jackson, where I'll be wearing green every day. So I'm wearing bright yellow today, just as my last chance for color for a long time.
Really, you're a couple days away from Fort Jackson. Wow, didn't know it was that soon. Hey, Jake, I hear you're somewhere where homeschoolers usually meet. What do you think that lesson behind you was today? Looks like maybe something about dinosaurs going. Nope, the other way. And the other way. There you go. There's, yep.
Yeah, it looks like a plant cycle. There are flowers and arrows.
Okay, there you go. Just like to know what I'm learning in any given day.
Yeah.
I'm confident Joanna will be back. She's in Houston, Texas, but she's been our weakest link. She's gotten bounced off a couple times. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about Iceland for a minute. Tom's worried that I'm never going to shut up, but have any of you guys been to Iceland? Any other folks here? Patrice, you've traveled so much. I thought maybe.
I've only been through the airport at one point.
Yeah,
that was touchdown, but I was there for a couple of hours, and I almost always promised myself I would go back because the color of the air was this blue that I've never seen anywhere else. But I haven't made it back yet. Sad to say. So tell us about it.
Well, it is truly true that I breathed air like I've never breathed and drank water like I've never drunk. I mean, the tap water is from the glaciers, you know, and they sell, ironically, they sell Iceland, you know, plastic bottles that say Iceland glacier water on them. And some of the folks there have started a campaign where they've put posters up all over the city that say, "Don't be fooled. It's just like tap water. Don't be buying plastic bottles and putting them here." And so anyway, it's amazing. The food is all organic, local, you know, there's no GMOs. I ate fresh fish every single day, just amazing fish. Stefan Jonassen was our tour guide, and if you know Stefan, he is from Iceland. I mean, his ancestors are, and there are only like 320,000 people in the whole country, and I swear to God, he's related to 2/3 of them. There is actually an app you can get so that you don't date somebody who's closer than third cousin, because so many people there are related.
We have that in Tennessee, too.
I was going to say, you should have that in Tennessee. but the beauty is staggering. I mean, we went inside a volcano crater. We climbed a glacier. There are waterfalls there that are just, you know, the size of Niagara Falls, and you just kind of drive out and they're just there. There's no hype around them. But now, you know, and the other thing is, after their financial meltdown, instead of bailing out the bankers, they ditched the bankers and bailed out the people who were affected. And so the wealth disparity there is just not, there is the feeling that people there are taken care of. And there was, for me, even though I was in charge of 11 people and 2 minivans and all of that, it felt like a meditation retreat. I mean, there's not stress in the system. So I can't say enough about it. And Shauna just posted that it's easy to do in a homogenous culture, and I'm going to challenge that, Shauna. I think it's never easy to bail out the people who aren't the rich people. And they made a very challenging choice, and they did it. And it is a more homogenous culture than most places in the U.S. these days, although not completely. Their immigration policies are really strict because they're really paranoid about having too many people there. And now the tourists outnumber. The main way that they climbed out was by boosting tourism. So now the tourists are going to outnumber the residents 3 to 1, and they're very worried about how that's going to be done. Yeah. So there are going to be about 1 million tourists through there. But I hate to say it, I'm going to continue to be one of them. So, but I was really glad. We were there too late to see the Northern Lights, but we were too early to see 1 million busloads full of Germans and other tourists, Americans, and I was really glad about that because I think it could get a little, in the summer months, it could get a little bad. It never got dark. Like, Stephen Jonathan is so crazy that one night we went out, we left at 9 in the morning. At 2 in the morning, we were driving these gravel roads looking for Eric the Red's house, and it was light, you know, it was still light. It was very fun. It was very fun. It was an interesting group. We were about half Canadian, half American, half ministers, half not, mostly retired people, because who has time and money to go to Iceland? But anyway, so that said, Joanna, you had something you wanted to talk about.
Hi, everyone. Yes, we'll see if my internet will continue working now. So here in Houston, we're one of the, I think, last major cities where we're trying to get a equal rights ordinance passed that will cover the rights of LGBT folks, you know, and not allow people to fire them or, you know, kick them out of their housing, etc. And so this has been going on. It's already been going on for at least 3 weeks of testimonies, and then yesterday they decided to delay the vote for 2 more weeks. But anyway, in all of this, several of our UU colleagues, a lot of UU church members have been going down and you know, getting their 1 minute to speak. On a couple of days ago, Becky Edmiston Lang, the Reverend Becky Edmiston Lang of Emerson Church, testified, and there's a video going around about it. She was very eloquent, you know, absolutely speaking truth to power, talking to the council people about, you know, look, y'all have been hearing these testimonies. You know that this discrimination exists. You've heard how people have had that happen in their lives. You know the right thing to do here. So very eloquent. And then one of the councilmen said, oh, by the way, when I was talking with you in that room back there, I had no idea that you were a minister. And he had some, you know, kind of funny stuff to talk about that. Apparently he was stealing snacks or something. And then one of the other council people, you know, made the you know, kind of use that as a way to make the point of, yes, we don't know what a minister looks like, or a transgender person, or, you know, gay or lesbian, and so we need to have these things set in place. So it was all going along really well. Then it goes back to the original council person, who his way of digging himself out of this was to compliment Becky by explaining that the reason why he didn't know that she was a minister was because he thought that she was a high school cheerleader. Yes, this, and I'm sure that he absolutely felt that he was giving her such a compliment. I did like the fact that one of the other council members said, boy, you're going down the wrong road there. You know, and I have to admit, afterwards I was thinking about this, and I'm like, this doesn't happen to Tom Shade. No one looked, you know, because Tom.
I thought Tom was always a cheerleader.
I don't know. I could be wrong. Tom, people often get you confused for high school cheerleaders. That's up, right?
Not really. Not really. Not even when I was in high school. I was voted least likely to reproduce in my high school senior class.
Oh, high school hard.
Okay.
Oh, Lord,
Tom,
Lord,
I
Lord.
want to be nice to you forever and ever after that.
What?
That makes me want to be nice to you no matter what. I'm so sorry.
Poor Tom.
Oh, it's a joke. Come on.
I
Come
know,
on.
yeah. I was just wondering if you trimmed your beard, if you might.
Look more like a cheerleader. Anyway, so that's what's going on here.
A chairman, I was thinking.
Here in
George
It's
Bush
really
was one.
interesting. Isn't it interesting to watch these states go with the marriage equality? I mean,
Oh,
Yeah.
you just never know what direction it's going to come from next. It's
There's a lot going
Really
on in
something.
Oregon right now.
Oh, yeah?
yeah.
Yeah, Oregon is hoping for a decision pretty soon.
Oh,
I
you
don't
saw
know.
it?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? And who would have thought we
would've?
would have seen a football player kissing his boyfriend after getting drafted? I mean,
Yeah, that has been a really fun story to watch, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And even the visa ad, I'll admit, even the visa ad made me a little teary.
oh, I didn't see the
He's in
visa.
this- Oh, it's in the visa ad where it's like Visa goes everywhere, kind of, and he's just saying, you know, judge me for what I do on the field. Judge me for, you know, how I did in the game. It's a Chuck Hunt said it to me. It's on my
After the
page.
draft, his jersey was the second most sold jersey, which is a marker, I guess, that they all use. You know, popular. Who would have thought?
Fabulous.
Second
Who would've
behind
thought?
a quarterback.
Right? And
There
our
you go.
colleague Jenny
Ironically-
Barrington did 12 weddings in Little
Well,
Rock
what are-
the other day. So.
Duncan, Duncan,
Yeah,
I'm
hi.
not trying
This
to keep
is
you out of this
Duncan from the
conversation.
Starbucks in Atlanta. I'm sorry for the background noise. I'm at the Starbucks across the street from my doctor's office. But what I was going to say was, ironically, a football player helped me come out, and it was David Coupe when he came out after he retired in 1970-something. And so I'm just like elated about this, the Sam's, and I'm so hoping that he and David Coupe can do like something together to sort of be bookends to this.
They're definitely building new ground. Jake, I was going to invite you to welcome Duncan, because I actually this is what I love about this show. I don't know Duncan, and so say a few words, and then about what you had a real specific thing Duncan's working on that you wanted us to talk about today. And Patrice, you wanted to say something else about football before we did that?
I wanted to say that I hope, you know, Michael went pretty far down in the draft because of his size. He's a little too small to be a linebacker and a little too slow to be something else. So actually what I really hope is that he finds a way to stay in the NFL and to continue his craft. So I think he's going to have kind of a hard time. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, and I'll just start to jump in, but I just heard this on NPR this morning that today marks the 10th anniversary of marriage equality in Massachusetts, where it all started. So it's, you know, thinking about that long decade that we've been through and how, like dominoes, it just keeps coming. So very exciting.
I feel like we got to have a prayerful moment of just who would have thought, you know? It's just, it really is amazing.
Jake, are you feeling pretty envious? I mean, we even had a law case in Texas.
Well, you know, it was Tennessee approving the 19th Amendment that pushed suffrage over the mark back in 1920. So I sort of feel as if fate is waiting Tennessee to play some special role, even if it's the 50th state making marriage legal everywhere. I don't know what it is, but there are a couple of cases in the pipeline, so it's going to happen here too, and a lot of people who've been working hard for years who are going to be partying and marrying.
Yeah, I mean, we got Arkansas, for goodness sake, right?
Yeah.
All right, Jake,
So-
take it away.
Yeah, so Duncan Teague served with the Tennessee Valley UU Church 2 or 3 years ago, and just made a great impact in that time. He had a whole former life and maybe 2 or 3 former lives before then, so he's not fresh out of undergrad. He had one life before that. But he just made a great impact in East Tennessee, and one of the things that was so great was I think he helped us understand, and perhaps especially our colleague Chris Bice at Tennessee Valley, with regard to his office, that there is a right way to put things together. There is a right way that things should look, and that this is connected to a sense of dignity in the ministerial office. So I thought that as Duncan prepares for his own ordination, after flying through with, I don't know if he got a standing ovation at the MFC this spring, but they were certainly happy to say your fellowship. As he plans for his own ordination this fall, I thought Duncan could help us think through what to do and what not to do in an ordination.
Do's and don'ts. All right.
Thank you, Jake.
Duncan.
Tennessee Valley was wonderful to me, and so one of the things I think I'm going to do is try to incorporate 2 congregations in one ordination. So that's going to be sort of like a 2-ring circus maybe. And I've been warned about wild animals, so they won't be in. And I also wanted to be honest about my spiritual journey, and that includes something called gay spirituality. And so how I tastefully include men in big skirts calling on the 4 corners, and rank by rank is going to be interesting. And I actually would like to have new music to rank by rank, but we'll see if we can afford that. I'd like sort of an upbeat, more like, not quite hip-hop, but something with some oomph to it.
I will be looking to hear that. That would be awesome.
That'd be cool. Patrice Curtis is also looking to involve 2 congregations in ordination. So, Patrice, you'll probably want to be chiming in here and getting some tips as well. So,
first thing I wanted to say is that Duncan and I saw the MFC at the same time, which is pretty amazing to see you again, Duncan. Hope you're doing well. So I got to see Duncan was already about wrapping up when I came out of the interview room. It went very well for both of us, so it was great. Good to see you, Duncan. And yeah, I'm also doing 2 congregations. So I'm really interested to hear your tips. What you've come up with so far.
So what are you imagining? And I'm interested in this because so many of us have been to so many of these for so long, and there's both the love of the tradition and a real interest in tweaking them. So I love the idea of the hip hop rank by rank. That's a great start. So let's just start by laying the groundwork. Can we just start by laying the groundwork for people who maybe aren't quite exactly 100% sure what an ordination is, what the purpose of it is? You want to take that one, Duncan?
Sure, because
you're back with the MFC.
In the South, and no, I'm not.
Kinder, gentler.
No, I am not. In the South, because of the church tradition down here, they don't ask about fellowshipping or credentialing. They ask, when are you going to be ordained? And so ordination is, of course, the right of the congregation to call a minister forward. And our sort of agreement with congregational polity to marry that with fellowshipping and to ask ministers to wait until your fellowship to be ordained is an interesting process. And so it's like having, for me, the party with the congregation that I've been waiting to have since I started. And their affirmation, which I had all along, but now at least it'll be official.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
No, go ahead, John.
As we're kind of talking through, you know, what is an ordination, one of the things that just so just humbled me was the fact that in our tradition, this is the one time when the congregation takes on the priestly role. You know, there are certain things that we do. We are not a sacramental religion, but we still, it's kind of hard to draw the line between what is and what isn't. We have things that are considered sacraments to us, and this is where the church as a whole makes someone, recognizes someone as a UU minister. And so to me, there's just this holiness in kind of that twist of what you expect, where it's not, you know, it's not another minister doing this, it's not the UUA doing this, it is the congregation becoming priest and saying, we ordain you to do this calling.
What I appreciate about it also is that in my story of ministerial formation, the congregation has been waiting to have a role, and this gives them a role.
And this is your home congregation, right? Yeah, I mean the one you came from.
I was wondering that too, Duncan. So you're getting ordained in the congregation where you felt your call to ministry? Is that...
Excuse me?
You're getting ordained by the congregation where you came in and felt your call to the ministry versus getting ordained by a congregation where you are going to be serving or something.
And the affiliate congregation that I was at for many years will be the congregation that also helps participate in this service.
So I had a similar, when I was discerning my ordination, I chose my home congregation, which, you know, has marinated me in love. Is the way I think about it. You know, they've walked with me. They've just supported me through this whole process, from, you know, not even hearing the call to hearing the call to actually getting to this point. And the other congregation is the one where I did my internship, where I felt that I grew into being a minister. I mean, they really have two very different places in my life, and both are just really equally important. And I just feel really blessed to be able to make this work out, because one is in Oregon and one is in California. And it's through my time at, you know, at the CLF that I've even been able to figure out how to even perceive of doing this. So it's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be challenging because of that, but it's also going to be, I just feel like it's going to be amazing. So it's going to take place in California, and there will be a few folks that will come down here, and then it will be streamed up to the chapel in Portland. So,
you know, the old school way was that, of course, you did your ordination by the, you know, the church that settled you, of course, and that doesn't work anymore. That's and it shifts things a little bit, because in some ways it makes the ordination the culmination of the formation process rather than the start of the career, right? It shifts that a little bit, and it makes it more about the minister and less about the church, and that has some effect, I think. But you know, I mean, what I was thinking about this morning was, as I was prepared for this, was you know, our biggest problem is the lack of institutional authority that ministers have. You know, that you get called, you get settled, and then you don't have any authority because you're the minister. You only get authority after 5 years of being really nice to people and them liking you, right? I mean, I'm not saying this is what the Commission on Appraisal said. Ministerial authority comes from your personal relationships with the people in the congregation, right? And up until the time you earn it. I mean, it's as though going to school for 4 years and an internship and a CPE and a psychological evaluation hasn't given you any authority yet. You have to still go earn it, right? You know, so what, you know, the more you make the ordination about the person, in a certain way, I mean, in a certain way, I would like to see this person passed, this person's called, this person, this is a minister. Damn it, you need to start treating this person like they know something about institutional religion, right? I mean, you know, just a little bit, you know, give them some slack. That's my
pretty high
to say
for ordination there, Tom.
You know, that's funny that you
I
said
have to say, for some people in Boston or places where, or Minneapolis, or places where there may be a sort of a cluster of more Unitarian Universalist congregations, it may be that ordinations are a dime a dozen. Somebody said on Facebook, oh yeah, it's ordination season coming up again. And I have to say, in the Knoxville area, there are years go by before you see one. So it's really unusual. Laura Bogle, the Foothills minister, was ordained last August in the Knoxville area, and it was the first time in 6 or 7 years, I think, since there'd been one. And what I saw was what you're talking about in terms of that real teach, both of you, Joanna, in terms of the power of the congregation, and also, Tom, the teaching the people about the tradition, what this means, what's the nature of the role and the relationship. And I wonder if there are different choices that are made if it's a dime a dozen ordination season again, so let's spice it up, versus this is our one chance in a decade to teach people in this area what, because I have to say...
what is a minister,
yeah. So I'm just wondering about that. And
Well, and so also, I mean, I am from...
Go ahead, Meg.
I am from one of those areas where they're not a dime a dozen, but there are a lot of them, because there's not only 10 churches, but there's a seminary there. So, so there are a lot of community ministers. And I think one of the things that's interesting is the difference in ordaining. To me, when somebody's being ordained and installed together, it has a very different feeling than when somebody's just being ordained. And particularly in community minister ordinations, there's no charge to the congregation, which I really have wondered about. I was ordained in 1992. I was one of the first community ministers to get ordained. And I was ordained at Arlington Street Church. I'd been interning in Roxbury at Church of the United Community. And so that church was very involved, but it wasn't a coordination. I don't know that those existed yet. I don't know. But they were very involved in the liturgy. But and at the time, I was the director of the GLBT office, so there was a lot of stuff about that. That was part of it. But the congregation voted, obviously, to ordain me. That was where I was going to church. I wouldn't say they were central to it, and I wonder how that's impacted my ministry, because it was where I lived then, but because I was interning in another church, I wasn't actually there all that often, So I think that the relationship of the ordinand and the church has a lot to do with it. And Patrice and Duncan, it's hearing the depth of your connection to the congregations that you want to ordain you. I think is going to have a very different flavor than Arlington Street Church, where I was one of dozens of ministers who attended that church because I was on UUA staff, and tons of UUA staff went to church there.
Mm-hmm.
So
whose recognition, Meg, was the crucial recognition in your being done? Ordained. Who had the power to recognize and say, this is Meg Riley, she's no longer a minister in formation. She is, put a fork in her, she's done.
Right. Well, those were the people I invited in, right? So I invited Elizabeth Ellis in to do the sermon because she had been my supervisor from the, what was then called the UU, now it's the UU Urban Ministry. At the time, it was the Benevolent Fraternity. And I really wanted her witness there, as well as her ex-husband, Graylin Ellis Hagler, who was my internship supervisor. But neither of them had the power to ordain me that Joanna's talking about. So Kim Crawford Harvey was part of the service, but she didn't really know my ministry tremendously well, And so for me personally, it was very relational. And of course, none of that was my actual ministry was at the UUA at that point. So when did I feel done as a minister? I think I slow cooked for a number of years, actually, after my ordination.
And the great crackpot
Well, and I think there's a difference between when you either felt that you were a minister, or for me it was I know the exact moment when I became a minister. It was me by a river with what I call God. But my ordination was the recognition that I was a minister, and that I was a minister in the Unitarian Universalist faith. But I felt that both of those were important, and so in my ordination that Meg was at, Meg gave me my charge. I wanted to honor both, and so the crucial element in the ordination is the actual ordination. So of course, where the president of the congregation and maybe puts a stole around your neck, and the whole church stands and do their words, and you do your words back to them. But I also had an anointing done by Tony Lorenzen as a symbolism for that moment by the river, because I felt that both of those were very important.
So, Tom, I was thinking about what you said about, when it's not going to the, it's not your settled church. And for me, it feels to me as if it is all of us together, and that the churches that are ordaining me are charging me to go out into and serve Unitarian Universalism. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to describe, but it's almost like there's a flow, like a flow of energy, and that I am really being, and that I am being tasked and expected to and pushed out, that these two congregations helped form what I am going to do for this faith. So I have a real disconnect with how you experienced it or experiencing it. To me, it feels very deep and holy, and not all about me. I don't know.
Let's pause for a second and make it all about us and do a round of introductions. And then I want to give our guests a chance to speak again about, Duncan, as you're planning your ordination, what you're envisioning. Meg Riley, sitting here in a Best Western Hotel in Concord, New Hampshire today.
I'm Joanna Fontaine Crawford. I'm in Houston, Texas.
I'm Patrice Curtis, and I'm in Concord, California.
And I'm Tom Shade in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
I'm Jake Morrill in somebody's basement outside Concord, Tennessee.
I'm Duncan Teague, and I'm at Starbucks in Atlanta. So please forgive the background noise.
And as Duncan starts talking again, I'll remind you that you can tweet at #TheVUU, TheVUU. And behind that chalice is Shauna Foster, our tech person. So Duncan, you're at Starbucks. Tell us about your excitement about this. What are you most excited about with the whole thing?
Maybe Starbucks is the right place for me to be because I feel called to start a new UU. And so my relationship to the ordination service is that I want to have the sanction of a community that loves me and that I have served before going out to start a new community. And part of that is so that I can tell the community that I'm walking into, I'm not a renegade. I really have some other UUs behind me. And they love me and they support this new organization that we want to get going, or this new community. And somebody in the chat wanted to know the difference between ordination and installation. And to me, ordination is when the community gets together and says, we love this person and this person is a minister. Installation is when it's sort of more particular and the community says, this is our minister. Mm-hmm. This is ours. And we're going to keep him for a moment or keep her for a moment. That's the difference to me.
So Jake has said that you helped put the Chris Bice's office together in a way that would really, held professionalism. And I don't know if he meant from IKEA or what he was really talking about, but what do you think with the ordination is really key for presentation? What are you dreaming of besides the hip hop rank by rank, which we like?
Well, I realized as I was talking that I'm actually including 3 communities instead of 2. So it is going to be quite a lot of folks. And that what I dream of is this opportunity for all 3 of them to celebrate my ministry and the ministry we've had together. Because it didn't just start because I finished seminary or because I made it through the MFC. It has been going on for years, especially with the First Existentialist congregation where I began my lay ministry. And so this is, like I said, to me, a chance to celebrate. And I want it to be joyous. And I do want it to be beautiful because aesthetics is a part of my spirituality. And when I walked into Chris Bice's office as an intern who was going to be there without Chris and have an off-site supervisor named Jake, I had to make that office work for me. And that meant it needed to be beautiful. And that was a discussion because we're very willing to talk about protest and not always willing to talk about beauty. And I had to sort of help them with that discussion.
Amen.
What do you think is beautiful at ordinations, or are you imagining art, or I had giant sculptures hauled into my ordination. Now that I think of it, they were like 6 feet tall. It was ridiculous, but I wanted something that said creativity and art, and man, they did. What are you imagining for your own?
Oops.
You're muted.
Meg, we got to know what the sculptures were.
Oh, they were kind of abstract people. They were made out of scrap. They were wood and metal, and I have pictures of them somewhere. Duncan, you're muted, so whatever profundity you are sharing is not getting to us.
Okay, what I said before, that only people who can read sign got, was that I'm married to a Quaker, and so part of the beauty of the service for me is that music has to be a key component and throughout the service. Both solos, both congregational music, lively, meditative, I want it all throughout, and to help bind things together and to give us the sense of where we are in the service.
Do you think visually also?
I am planning on what I'm going to wear, and it's going to be off the chain.
I want photos of this one. You should live stream it. Sounds great.
Part of it is also that the community of gay men who do gay spiritual work here in the Southeast accidentally ordained me. Before I went to seminary, one of the guys who came from the Baptist tradition said, "Why don't we lay hands on Duncan before he goes to seminary?" And the right hand of fellowship is a rite of ordination. And they did it without sort of knowing that. So I went to seminary feeling as though I had the love and support of that community already. And so they're going to be incorporated in this in their own particular way. And there's nothing more exciting than the men from the gay spiritual movement.
That's great. I really do hope you'll live stream it.
I really want to know what you're thinking about wearing. Give us any clues?
Is it going to
In addition
sparkle?
to the clerical robe, I have seen African religious robes, and because of genetic testing, I know which countries we're descended from, and I would love to come up with something that's appropriate from that tradition. My family is originally from Ghana and Nigeria, and the Yoruba nation, the ancient Yoruba nation.
Wow. Great. Very exciting. I'm going to go back to a comment from Mark Gibbons a while ago where he said that he's been to ordinations where they did have a charge to the congregations and that it was probably the choice of the minister. And of course, ministers and others do have a lot of choices about what to leave in and what to take out. Vicki Weinstein recently at her installation took out, I can't even remember what she took out, that it was like, you're allowed to take that out, you know? And she said it's boring, whatever it was. It wasn't obviously the charge or anything like, I mean, it was the charge actually, and but it wasn't the rights. And I just thought, you know, what we have these kind of rigid, this has to be done, then this, and this kind of person should do that, and what, you know, what, and maybe Tom, you're the person who knows this. What do you actually have to have, you know, to have it be official? Is it just that the president of the congregation does that? Is that the only piece that you, I mean, what could you take out and still call it an ordination? I guess that's what I'm wondering.
Well, I think that you got to, I mean, first off, you have to be clear about what it is ritually that's happening. I mean, if it is the congregation that's ordaining you and installing you, then you need to have those people there and present. What I wonder about is whether or not we're trying to do whether or not the nature of the process has changed so that we're using old rituals to do new things, and that you know, when I hear of community ministers being ordained and a congregational president is doing these words and the congregation's repeating back, and that's really not what the person's ministry is about, I'm going, well, that's a ritual that doesn't fit the reality. And rather than try to cram the reality into old rituals, we should be thinking of new rituals. You know, what I'm hearing people talk about, both Patrice and Duncan, is that the act that's going on is a commissioning. You know, people are being sent forth to do our ministry in the wider world. That's what's going on with most community ministers. We're commissioning them And the recognition is coming first from other ministers, and secondly from a larger group of lay people who are activists in UU world, and thirdly from congregational leaders, often who don't really see beyond the walls of their thing. And so, you know, you need a commissioning ceremony, all right? Words of commission that being said instead of words of installation or ordination, you know. And I mean, yes, it's an ordination, you know. I mean, you got to have those words, ordination words in there. Otherwise, when people ask you when were you ordained, you'll go, I don't know. And you need to be able to say that, right? You need to get that plaque on the wall. But you know, really, it's a commission. So really, you know, I would start fresh with going, what's the reality of being done here? What's the person, and who's doing it? Who's doing it?
Right. Well, and aren't
and
there
then who needs to be spoken to? You know,
right.
I mean, maybe with community ministers, I think we need a charge to the congregation. You know, because you have to look at them and say, listen, this is not the minister you're going to see every week, but this is still your minister, and they're your responsibility, and they're under your care, and they're counting on you to be behind them. So step up. You know, that's what I would say to a congregation and a community. I mean, I can't believe that you take that out. You know, right. Anyway. Go ahead, Joanna.
Aren't there two different movements that are happening? And one is the calling the person out from the community, you know, calling them out from the congregation. That's our history. And also the sending them forth. And, you know, I'm not, even for a parish minister, I think that aspect is pretty important. Now, granted, I'm all missional, so y'all know how I feel about that it's, you know, that your parish is not just the walls of the church. It's also going to Starbucks, you know, and being out there or doing work out in the community. So I think something that acknowledges both the bringing out that you are one of us and yet we are setting you apart, and the sending forth, the commissioning.
Well, you know, really, if you think about just that commissioning versus installation, that's saying, the congregation saying, we've chosen you to take care of us. Right. I'm a little grimacy on that, because that's not what we're now thinking about as being ministry. We're saying we've chosen you to represent us, to extend us into the world.
Well, to walk with us, to journey.
Yeah, right, to journey with us, but we're counting on you to be a leader. You know? And of course, we don't like to use that word very much. Right?
So I'm really curious. Go ahead,
well, what I would say is that maybe, in fact, the congregation is saying we've already recognized you as a leader, and we're sending you out. Mm-hmm. And that's why I wanted to be ordained by a familiar congregation, not somebody who didn't know me. But also, I have a technical issue, y'all, because we do have congregational polity, and that's that my congregation has to vote on my ordination this coming Sunday. So everything is pending the vote. But I have, I'm anticipating a good outcome.
Good luck.
I'm in exactly the same situation in that one of the congregations will be voting this Sunday. The other one, it's the board that votes. But there was a vote involved in both cases.
Another comment from Mark Gibbons. Mark, if you don't know, is married to Kendall Gibbons and has done a fair share of ordinations and installations by now himself. He said only a congregation can ordain a minister in our denomination, so maybe the commissioning is more like an installation, not an ordination. And certainly at mine, which was, as I said, one of the first community ministry ordinations, I had some of the communities that I was reaching out to. So I had Warren Blumenfeld, who'd written a book about homophobia, and really he was Jewish. He wasn't UU, really talking about my ministry to the queer community, because at that time my position at the UA was director of the GLBT office, and I had somebody from Church United Community talk about my commitment to be with the poor, you know, and so it was in a way, though the act of ordination came from the congregation, it was kind of both and I would say, like Joanna, my own sense of when I became a minister, when I really think about it, was before I saw it was the night before I saw the MFC, and I was terrified, as we all were, and I sat in prayer and meditation, and then I said, it really doesn't matter what they say. I already know that I'm a minister. And if they say I'm not, then I'm not going to be a Unitarian Universalist minister, but I already know that I'm a minister. Or I'm going to be a Unitarian Universalist minister, but not official, you know. So there's the professionalization of ministry. And one of the things I always feel at ordinations is I hate it when they feel like they're like graduations. Whenever I preach them, and I preach a fair number, I do not preach about the person at all.
Right.
I always preach about something bigger in the movement. Jake, you look like you're ready to talk.
Yeah. It's not a celebration of you.
Well, I'm thinking about, so I made this joke last Sunday at church saying, you know, letting people know that, that I had deliberately chosen to spend the summer with drill sergeants shouting in my ear rather than driving up to Gatlinburg every Saturday to do weddings. You know, that I would rather do one than the other, because over time these weddings that I go up to in the Smoky Mountains, I feel often like I'm being used as a prop, and like the service itself is either trying to endorse wholesale some sense of tradition or to reject it wholesale, no matter how I work with them. And that, like that experience of with Joanna by the river, often these are couples who have had that moment, or Meg before the MFC, they've had that moment where they become married or feel married, but that's not what the wedding is for them. You know, I ask, what's the difference the day after your wedding going to be for you? And they kind of shrug and they say, well, we want to party, or we want to let people know, you know, or whatever. But I wonder about this because it sounds like Patrice has really found a way that it is the event itself is a meaningful ritual where some power will be transacted, or something will happen at the thing, which is maybe a great rebuttal for my cynicism about ritual.
So this is called what? Do's and don'ts of ordination. So in our remaining few minutes, what are some of the don'ts? And I think those can be argued on, because at my ordination, I encouraged live tweeting, which was authentic and to me and my ministry. I was still working with the CLF. I'm very glad I did it, although I will say, if you're going to have live tweeting at your ordination, make sure that you say something about it, like in the welcome, because I found out afterwards that my dad was looking at all of the ministers who were doing what I had asked to do and going, look at those rude people checking their email during my baby's ordination. So what are some of the don'ts?
I think somebody already said it. I get a little creeped out when it's, you know, excessively personal. I mean, I've been at ordinations where childhood friends testified, not to anything specific about faith or, you know, why this person is a minister, but just that, you know, they were a great friend when they were young. I know the children of seminarians make a lot, you know, are all involved in the formation process, but I'm not sure that they need to testify at the ordination. And the one thing
they're great at lighting a chalice. Great at lighting a chalice.
Yeah,
they're great at lighting a chalice.
Right. The one thing I did hear, though, was I was at an installation, and the RE director brought in comments that she had solicited from the children for the new minister. And one of the children apparently said that she hoped that the new minister had a collegial and non-hierarchical relationship with the RE director, which I thought was like, I thought was a tremendously advanced child, right, to have such a cogent grasp.
I wonder whose child that was.
I thought that was, so don't plant words in the mouths of the children. But
it's great. Huh. You know, I think don't make them insanely long. I mean, I've been to some 2.5-hour services, and that's just too long. Hey, Duncan, welcome back. We're going to give you some of the final words here, if Starbucks lets you have them. So I would say, you know, they're probably going to need to be 1.5 hours, but they don't need to be 2.5 hours long. Duncan, do's and don'ts you want to share from what you've observed and what you want to create?
you're still you're still duck. You're
Do
still.
unmute your mic.
This is
There you
a
go.
don't, and I'm a new year. I need to be careful of this one, but I think there needs to be as much congregational participation as possible in it, so that this rite that they're observing really reflects their communal power. So a don't is having a service where nobody from the congregation does anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, Duncan, we also had a question, just out of curiosity. What are you most nervous about?
That I have waited so long for this, and it is so meaningful that I don't boo-hoo through the whole thing, like I did my wedding. I am going to have to somehow control the waterworks, because I cry anyway, and they make miserable pictures when you're just boo-hooing. I know we're going to have a good time. I know it's going to be very sacred. I know it's going to be very diverse and exciting. But I got to do something to like calm myself down.
Well, but the good news is you're mostly just sitting in the pew. So, I mean, you're not up at the mic. So if you're crying, you know, it's not as awful as if you cry through a funeral, say. So people will love it, actually. People will love it. Thanks for coming, and thanks for opening this topic, which clearly we could talk about for a long time.
Thank you.
I'm curious, Jake and Tom, you've said nothing about your ordinations. Do you have anything you want to say about them before we end?
You know, mine was at the First Church in Worcester, you know, about 6 weeks after, you know, getting settled there. And it was, you know, pretty traditional ordination, you know, in the old school, because that's how Worcester did things, old school. So it was an ordination and an installation, and it was with people who I had just begun to get to know, but they were expressing their confidence in me to be their minister. And so that felt really good. But on the other hand, they were not the people who called me into ministry, which was the people in the church in Countryside Church in Palatine, Illinois, who had, you know, bothered me for 5 years saying you should go to seminary. And when I kept saying no, I can't afford to take that kind of pay cut. But, you know, so that was my ordination and installation. Jake?
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, I was ordained by the church I grew up in, Tennessee Valley UU Church, and by that point in the summer I knew that I was going to be serving Oak Ridge as my first church, so their neighbor church is 15 minutes away, and so Oak Ridge came and helped out, and it was great. It was like my This Is Your Life with all of my Sunday school teachers filling the pews, and, you know, everybody and all the people who I was going to be serving in Oak Ridge, and I think I was so terrified that I was hardly able to hear anything that anyone said the whole time, but I hear it went very well.
I love it.
It
Well,
took.
thanks for spending. Yeah. Say what, Joanna?
I said it took.
It took. There you go. Thanks for spending the hour with us, and come back next week. We'll do something fun. So long.
Again, we'll do something.